Hey guys, welcome to Learning from Singapore Entrepreneurs, the podcast where we go behind the scenes of what it actually takes to build a startup. I'm Shoaib,
And I'm Tedman.
and we are the co-founders of Nugget. We know what's it like to build a company out of nothing, and throughout our journey, we have learned many important things from many wonderful people. So through this podcast, we aim to bring all these brilliant minds in the Singapore startup ecosystem to share their journey and experience with you.
Each week, we sit down with founders and ecosystem builders to hear the honest and unfiltered stories. Whether you're building your own company or thinking of starting one, we're glad you're here and we've got great conversations lined up. Let's jump straight in.
Hey guys, so welcome back to Learning from Singapore's podcast session, and today we have a very special guest, Jaka Bavdek from Epistemy, as well as E-matura, so that's kind of interesting. The reason we have Jaka on this podcast is that Jaka came to Singapore first time like as an exchange student at SMU, and could you believe it, for the first 3 months he was here, he actually started a company and had a few clients, and then but it's like a whole interesting journey. So Yaka has been in entrepreneurship for like many years. He has done it in his home country, Slovenia, and then he has done it in various other countries. One of it is Singapore, then all around Europe. So yep, very excited to have you today, Yaka. How are you feeling today?
Guys, thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure. Good to reunite with both of you. And yeah, looking forward to all the questions and a discussion.
Yep, sounds amazing. So the first thing that I wanted to ask you is like, tell us about your first company. How did you like get all started? Like back to Slovenia. Yeah.
Okay, so that was quite a long time ago. So when I was younger, I've always been very interested in entrepreneurship, and I've had quite a few ventures, like between the ages of 15 and 19. So I was doing everything from like reselling products from China on the Slovenian equivalent of eBay to making a platform where people can kind of sell their old school books. And then we bought a lot of them and sold them all around Slovenia. Then I also had like a makeup studio where girls could kind of come before their prom nights and they could have makeup done by professionals. So I did a bunch of these small ventures. Some of them were more successful, some of them were less successful. Probably the most kind of meaningful one that I did in my teenage years was called Authoritative, which was basically a company where we organized lectures for students for the final exam in high school. So we would rent out lecture theaters in Slovenia and we would hire professors. They would come, they would prepare the students for the final exams in high school. So like a 4-hour session. And students would pay around 20 to 25 euros for the whole session. And that would basically be it. And when I was doing that, I was 17 and 18 years old. And I realized that just by doing something entrepreneurial, instead of like working at a cafe or something like that, I can actually earn quite a bit of money while also giving out some value to my peers. And for example, in the first year, we had about 300 students, which, 300 paid clients, that was really big at the time. And yeah, that kind of gave me more confidence to pursue entrepreneurship in the future and to also kind of go deeper into the tech space.
Wow. So that's like quite interesting. So you got people in, and then they train them for their exams, basically. And then so then was that the inspiration? What is that where you saw that like, okay, like taking that further, right? So maybe like I want to ask you about like E-matura as well, right? So was that your inspiration for E-matura? Is that where it came from, or was it like a separate journey?
Yeah, so I mean, the two companies are definitely kind of overlapping and intertwined. So basically, this initial venture, Authoritative, um, was kind of like happening before COVID. So that was every year, it was a seasonal business. Before exams, we used to host these lectures. The issue with that venture was that it wasn't scalable at that time because it was only, bound to the exam season. So that's why I kind of ventured off to a new thing that I started, which was also my first company with offices and with like a more established team. That one was called Academy. And essentially it was like a digital agency because throughout all of these small projects that I was doing before, I was meeting a bunch of designers, video producers, photographers. And I realized that a key of like go to market and successfully marketing your products is digital marketing and having good content. And my thought was, okay, if we can do this for our B2C brands, why not offer it in a B2B type of way? So basically, I started this digital agency, rented the first offices, kind of led a team of 15 people at the peak. So these were all contractors working on different domains. And then when the exam season came, we would also do the live lectures, right? But then when COVID happened, a lot of things changed because all of a sudden the students couldn't go to school anymore, and obviously all of the live lectures we weren't able to host them anymore. And also we lost the majority of our big clients. So the new company, Procademy, the digital agency, wasn't doing that well, which made me kind of like try to look for different alternative options where we use the knowledge and the know-how that we have and build a B2C product that is more adapted to the circumstances. So basically fully remote and more scalable. And that's where I kind of combined both of the worlds with which I was involved before. So the education and also the digital marketing and video production. And that's where E-matura came to be. And E-matura, maybe just like as an opening, it's essentially like a digital platform that offers courses, so videos, quizzes, notes to different students. Initially, it started as a smaller venture in Slovenia, became the market leader in 3 years, and currently it's operating on a global level. So we're present in more than 8 countries, and we essentially prepare over 100,000 students a year for their final exams in high school. So that's the state of the company.
Yeah, and that's like it's an amazing story. Like every time I look at E-matura and then I see like the quality of like the content and everything, it's like amazing. And like you were the first one, right? Like in Slovenia, who actually came up with like this kind of like online content the students basically purchase. Also, e-matura is like, or in Singapore context, it's like our A levels. So like this is what like students take before they go to universities. It's a very important exam for which like students as well as like parents are willing to pay. And then when you have everything digital platform, I think that was, and then you had COVID. So you're one of the few entrepreneurs that actually made good use of COVID. So that's kind of insane. Yeah, you were saying?
Yeah, and also, I mean, it was a good. So, just a small correction: we weren't the first one. So there was actually one other company doing something similar before us, and their timings was even better. But we thought that we could be the best, so that's why we entered the market a bit later, and we already had some market insights, and then that kind of allowed us to scale successfully. But furthermore, like it was a really good opportunity for me to also take advantage of the fact that my bachelor's degree was fully remote at that point. So I had a lot of excess time on my hands, and building a company seemed like the best way to kind of take that time and do the most that I can with it.
Yeah. Wow, that's quite cool. So then after you graduate, you went down to LBS. So maybe I'll ask you about like some of your experience in London Business School and then how is the London startup ecosystem based on your experience?
Yeah, obviously London Business School, different world. I lived in Slovenia for 22 years, was surrounded with a bunch of great people, but it was only when I went to London, so basically when I moved abroad for the first time, that I actually experienced the scale of businesses globally. And I was surrounded with extremely smart people, very ambitious people who wanted to do consulting, investment banking, and some of them also wanted to pursue entrepreneurship. And that type of environment also kind of allowed me to think bigger, and it allowed me to think that, at some point in the future, I'll be able to build a huge company. And it also made me believe that thinking big is okay. It's not something that I should shy away from, or it's not something that I should, try to avoid, but I should instead embrace it. So that was definitely like a key turning point for me. um, it was also a bit of a challenge because obviously, most people when they go to like a good business school, they try to break into these prestigious jobs like consulting, investment banking. So I also got kind of soaked into that process. But in the end, I decided to kind of pursue what I've always been the most invested in, and I decided to go into entrepreneurship full time.
Mm,
Okay.
great. I think that is a great time to ask this question. So I think since you've been doing entrepreneurship since like the start, right? What did your family or friends around you think when you told them that you were going to approach this full time?
That's a very good question. So I think they were quite supportive. They might have been a bit shocked. I mean, I've always been kind of like an entrepreneurial, kid that always tried to do a lot of entrepreneurial stuff. So I think there were signals there ever since I was very young. I kept coming up to my parents with new ideas, and they would say, "Oh, this is not good. This is not good," So they would definitely be very involved in my initial entrepreneurial journey. I think the biggest shock came when, like a couple of months into my London Business School degree, I landed a really good job in consulting in Dubai. And it was obviously like a really high salary, like good compensation. Basically, like for a kid from Slovenia, it's like a dream come true. And something that I couldn't even kind of imagine before going to London. But then, like, I was in London for 1 year, finished my degree, went to Singapore, and I was supposed to start my full-time job after my exchange in Singapore. So basically in January 2024. And then after starting a new venture in Singapore, I decided to quit the job that I had in Dubai. So the dream job that like everybody would kill for. And that came as quite a big of a surprise for my parents because I mean, they couldn't understand why exactly I would make a decision like that because I mean, from their point of view, I kind of made it in life, right? With signing this big contract. But for me, it seemed good, but it just didn't seem right based on what I wanted to do or achieve in the future. So I think it took them a bit of time to kind of understand that. But once they, got to understand where I was coming from and why I made this decision, I think they were okay with it and they accepted it. So I think they still love me.
I think that's the most important part is that the understanding from like your family. Okay, great.
Yeah. So I think then one question I wanted to ask you, right? So like you had your digital marketing agency and then you go up to like E-matura, and then I think you're one of like the founders on our podcast that like usually works with a lot of people, right? So one thing I want to ask you about is like how do you go about hiring the best people?
It's a very good question. Yeah, I mean, big disclaimer: none of the things that I did alone. So I was never like the solo founder because I don't have a technical background. So I was always positioning myself more as kind of like the business, like the driving force of kind of coming up with ideas, solving problems, and then building the right team that can actually effectively solve those problems and bring the product to market. Um, and I've had the privilege and the opportunity to work with some extremely smart people, both in my initial ventures in Slovenia and also now, kind of building more global ventures. I think at the beginning, it wasn't like the whole hiring process wasn't that structured. It was more just based on my personal networks and kind of knowing which people would be able to fit different roles. And because I was always very big on building tangible relationships and actually connecting with people on a personal level, it was always quite easy for me to understand who could potentially become a part of the things that I wanted to build. So that was definitely like the main funnel for early stage hiring, I would say. But now, obviously, with the ventures growing, we obviously systemized hiring a lot more. So, for example, when E-matura was scaling to new markets, when we were going to Poland, Romania, and Hungary, we had a very sophisticated pipeline where we, had a lot of candidates that can lead all these new markets that we were building, and we had to screen them through a lot of exercises, like take-home assignments, multiple rounds of interviews, and stuff like that. And through that, I was able to find some really, really like ambitious and driven people who want to be a part of this type of venture. They're mainly very young, but they also want to be in positions where they do actually have autonomy and they have opportunity to do something more rather than just like to pursue a 9 to 5. So I think that was my kind of key focus. Try to find people that want to be extremely independent, that are very curious, they want to learn a lot, but also people that are not afraid of taking on the responsibility, even at a young age, or even in a domain which they might not be perfectly comfortable with yet. So that was my approach.
Oh, that's actually quite that's the kind of people you want to be on your side, right? Like the ones that are driven by mission and not just by like, where's my next pay coming from, or like, like I'm like 5 p.m. Hey, you know what? Pack up. I'm going back home. Right. I think in a fast running kind of environment like startups, it becomes very hard. But then that also raises a question, right? How do you manage them remotely? Like that's insane.
That's a good question. I mean, for my first venture, obviously, it's kind of gotten to a point where I'm not that much operationally involved, so I'm more involved in like the strategic aspects, and I communicate with the CEO, and I join some of the weekly sessions that we had, like with the syncs and everything with the team. So we've kind of grown to a point where all these independent people, who are extremely smart, extremely capable, they are able to kind of drive the company forward. And obviously, when I'm needed, I'm always there and I'm always available and accessible. But I try to give them as much independence as possible. But when it comes to, for example, my new company, Epistemy, I'm currently in charge of like leading the sales team, so kind of taking care of the commercial end of the business. And I think obviously leading a remote team comes with certain challenges, but at the same time, I think the most important thing is the type of people that you bring into the company. If those people are actually there to bring value, and as you also mentioned, like not just there to make quick money and go out, then they're gonna want to invest more time into this, and they're gonna want to be assertive. They're gonna want to learn from you, right? They're gonna want to be accessible. So I think step number one is finding the right people who are going to be accountable and ambitious, and they want to add value to the business, and then also kind of building a system that still has enough touch points through which the knowledge in between the company can be shared, whether that's one-on-one things with the team or like kind of things with the entire team where you can share ideas and stuff like that. I think those are also very important to kind of keep the culture going.
Okay, since you're on Epistemy now, maybe you should take some time to also introduce like what's this new venture, like the new tech, the new global venture that Jaka is coming out with, Epistemy.
Yeah, sure. So basically, after I kind of moved back from Singapore, came back to Europe, I was looking for a technical co-founder because, as I said, like I have a bit of business experience, but I'm quite weak on the tech side because I've never been an engineer. I didn't study engineering. So I wanted to kind of find someone who can help me bring these ideas to life. And I wanted to go deeper into software. And especially when I was in Singapore, I saw a lot of potential in the AI space. And I knew that it was a rapidly kind of emerging space. So I wanted to be a part of that. Um, so I started working with my co-founder Frank, and basically what we're doing with Epistemy is we're working with different educational and training providers. So companies that are training people for interviews or training people for negotiations, for sales, or just I don't know, like preparing people for exams. And we're essentially kind of positioning ourselves as an enabler of AI adoption for all these companies. So obviously, we all know that AI is going to have and is already having a huge impact in all these educational verticals. But sometimes these companies find it extremely hard to adopt this technology because they're not positioned as like a tech company. They're not an AI first company. So we try to bridge this gap, and we try to help them kind of like adopt this technology and bring it to market so they can better serve their users and also potentially kind of add more value and then also capture a portion of that value. So that's our current positioning with Epistemy.
Uh, That's quite. That's like so. Then the transit. So I hear like for Epistemy, I see that like the major focus is like everything then comes back to the tech. Like the core of the business is like tech, as opposed to like E-matura back then, where the core of the business was a product, but wasn't like a tech product, right? The distribution channel was through tech, was digital. So what do you think? Like since you have run like both kinds of businesses, right? What do you think is like the main challenge for each kind, in a sense that what was like the big thing that you need to change or maybe understand, or in a sense like or learn when you came from like a solution that was like product based through like a digital channel, and then the another one where like it was like a tech product, in a sense that like everything comes to like a subscription or a SaaS, for example.
Yeah, this is a very good question. So obviously, vastly different kind of companies, although they're both under this big, I would say, EdTech or education umbrella. One of them is B2C, the other one is B2B. So that's already like a huge difference. I think one of the biggest benefits for me when I was starting E-matura was that although I was a 19-year-old kid building this company from my bedroom, nobody cared because the end users, so the customers, which are the students and their parents were the ones paying for the product, they only care about the content and the quality of the product. They don't care about, you know, who's the team behind it, and are those people credible? Do they have enough experience? No, like we have something that they need, and we help them address their problem with a good product. So I think for that business, the main two kind of aspects of making it successful was firstly to be obsessed about the product and the content. So it's truly like bringing in extremely talented people who are experts in their subjects, who can film content that is very, very useful for the students and also very engaging. But then on the other hand, it's like the other aspect that was very important for the business is also having extremely good and strong distribution channels. So being good on social media, like being good at kind of Facebook targeting, like Facebook marketing, Google Ads, and stuff like that. So all this distribution was also extremely important. Now, when it comes to Epistemy, it's obviously a different story. You're building a B2B company. It's extremely important to be credible, to have a good reputation. People want to know who's behind the company. People want to know what you've done before and why you are the best fit for them. So obviously, those are completely different challenges. I wouldn't say that one or the other is necessarily easier. It's just a lot different. And I think as a founder, the best thing that you can do is just kind of be flexible and be willing to learn all of these new skills that your company demands of you. And then once you learn those skills, then you can be more successful at the venture that you're building.
Yeah, definitely. Like that adaptability part needs to be there. I think you defined it very clearly in a sense that like there's B2C and B2B. I think you need to do both to be able to like, be snap on to tail, say like, hey, this is how it's different. I want to
And I
ask
would say,
you.
if I can just follow up on that, I would
Yeah.
also say that being a B2C first and having the understanding of what like I thought about when I was kind of like the CEO of that company and what my objectives were, and also what the pain points of my clients were, having that additional understanding also helped me when I was communicating with those clients with Epistemy, right? Because now E-matura type of businesses are actually within my ICP. So I think
Yeah.
having that knowledge and that know-how of how those companies think helped me kind of translate this into more success when I started targeting those clients.
Oh, that's a way I actually never even thought about it. Since you have a company and then now you're running it, then you kind of understand, like, for example, head of another startup, like how they think, right? Because you have a company of your own, of that scale. I think that's a huge advantage for at least like second time founders, in a sense that they know how like the startup or the earlier business, let's say if it was successful in the case of, let's say, like in E-matura, then they understand kind of like how things work, and it makes it kind of more easy for them to approach, let's say, B2B companies, in a sense that like, hey, I know you're facing this issue, right? And then most of the time it would be like kind of hit the spot. Well, what do you think, Tevman? Like, you are also running like a B2B startup. What do you think about these challenges?
Yeah, I would definitely think like B2B is in a different space as compared to like B2C companies. So like actually Yaka, what do you think, since you're experienced in both sections as well, right? Maybe what will you define success in maybe like the B2C company versus like a B2B company?
That's a good question. I think obviously like one factor that can be spread across all types of businesses, no matter the vertical, no matter the focus, whether it's B2B or B2C, is obviously monetary results, right? So how much revenue you're making and what are your margins and stuff like that. Um, but I think more specifically, and we should also ask ourselves what gets us to the point of those monetary results, right? And what gets us to those monetary results in the B2C case is going after a market that's both big enough, but then also a market where we are the company that can solve the problem of the customers to the best kind of like to the best level in the entire market, right? So I think obsessing over customers and being like having an open conversation with them and constantly working on the product to make it better. I think that's the key point in terms of like the B2C businesses. When it comes to B2B businesses, it's mainly making sure that you deliver value to your B2B clients, because at the end of the day, if they want to collaborate with you, the value proposition needs to be very clear. And especially early, like at the early stages, they might be willing to experiment, they might be willing to see how it works. But then sooner or later, they're either gonna want to have tangible results or they're not gonna work with you anymore. So the sooner you get to a point where you're saying, hey, we're either helping you cut costs or we're helping you make more money, the sooner you get to that point where those results are clear, you like the better off you are, right? And the more easily you can also showcase this to future clients, because then you've already kind of achieved it, and then you can just scale this and make it more kind of like, you know, make it more scalable as a whole. So that will definitely be a big part of B2B. The other big part of B2B is also relationships, right? In B2B, especially like kind of getting your foot in the door, it can be very hard, especially if you're talking to bigger clients. So you have to be very conscious of building up the relationships and understanding that the sales cycles can be quite long and quite tedious. So you actually have to be not just selling your company and your product, but you have to be selling yourself as a team and as a person, right? Because especially in early stage companies, you want to position yourself as someone that the other party wants to actively work with, right? And you have to give them the confidence that you can be the company that helps them solve the problems that you're pitching that you're going to solve, right? So I think that's also an extremely important aspect of B2B.
Yeah, definitely. The relationship part for sure. That's what we see as well. Like for us, like if in a sense that we know a startup from somewhere or like there's some like point of connection, it makes it much easier to start a conversation as opposed to like just reaching out, even on LinkedIn, like reaching out like out of the blue and then saying like, hey, I can help you with this. But I think in B2B, there's always the question that like, do I trust you? Like you just a random person message me on LinkedIn, right?
For sure.
And I think that the bigger the company gets, the harder this problem becomes. Because then there are like multiple decision makers. First of all, like you can reach out to, I mean, you can reach out to 3 to 4 people in an organization. So that's like, they need to decide which one to reach out to. Each one of them have like a different problems and everything. So
That's true.
I wanted to take you a bit back on the timeline. I want to bring you back to Singapore. I want to ask you. So, how was your experience? Like, what are the good things about like the Singapore ecosystem? And what will help us the most? What are some of the things that you think can be improved on?
Mm-hmm. Okay, very good question. So first of all, my time in Singapore was great. I met some amazing people. I ate some amazing food. So whenever I'm going back to Singapore, I'm always looking forward to it, and I think it's a great place. In terms of the good parts of Singapore, I think the ecosystem is actually quite open. So they're kind of open to foreigners coming in with ideas. It's also trying to be not too bureaucratically kind of like complicated or complex, which is very good. Like most of the European countries have very complex bureaucracy. So, for example, in Slovenia, it's very, very hard to start a business as a student because you lose a bunch of the perks that you have as a student. You have to all of a sudden start paying certain taxes and stuff like that, insurance. And that's why most of the people get scared before they even actively or actually consider starting a company in Slovenia. Is the same in Germany, where I'm currently, like in Berlin. A lot of people are complaining about bureaucracy and high tax levels. So I think Singapore is definitely pretty good at that. So the taxes are relatively low, and also the bureaucratical part is not that complex. In terms of the things that the Singaporean ecosystem could improve in, I think mainly it would be like the knowledge exchange. So basically, kind of connecting the technical people, which are I would say at an extremely high level in Singapore, with people who actually have a lot of ideas and want to commercialize certain things, but not just commercialize them locally, but also commercialize them globally. I think Singapore is kind of being challenged with this connectivity and kind of building an ecosystem where more of the founders can get connected. There are certain organizations or certain VCs that are trying to kind of overcome this, but I still think that it's not as open as some of the other ecosystems that I've experienced. So those will be the main things that I would point out, kind of to answer that question.
Yeah, definitely. I think that in Singapore, like we have a lot of people who are very good at tech. We don't have enough people who come on to these people and say like, hey, you know what? Let's start something. I have an idea. Let's do something together. Let's act on it. I think that's something that we definitely need to work on. What do you think, Tim? Yes, yeah, you were saying first.
No, like also, I think it also kind of it's also related to the culture, right? Because Singapore is it's a country that's obviously like a rich country. There are good opportunities for everyone in Singapore, or for most people. So I would say that makes, obviously, like it's like the living standard in Singapore is very high, but it also means that people tend to be more risk averse, so they are less kind of incentivized to go all in to start a venture, because why would you do that if you have this completely fine stable job that you can get with high pay, low tax rates, and everything else? And I think what you're seeing in a lot of other countries that are not that well off, that I don't know, have a way lower GDP per capita, lower purchasing power. People are coming from a point where the only way to kind of improve their status or to improve their quality of life is through entrepreneurship, because all the other opportunities are going to lead to outcomes that aren't that favorable. So I think that's one of the very good things about Singapore, but one of the things that also makes the whole ecosystem more challenging because it is a very like an all around very good place to just be comfortable in.
Exactly. And I really feel like Singapore, like exactly to your point, like Singapore is one of the few places, let's say that if you do well in school and you're like a person with like a lot of good grades and everything, you can live a very, very comfortable life. You don't need to like, yeah.
That's
so-
very structured.
Yeah, right. You don't need to like go through like you don't need to be an entrepreneur to live comfortably or even like above like let's say middle class in Singapore, as long as you do well in school and you are good at your work and whatever you do, you can live a very nice life. So that completely takes away the incentive to come out and say like, you know what, um, I'm not gonna like okay, school is school. I mean, not saying that they should do bad in school, but like I'm gonna take this risk and go beyond because I mean, if you do well in school in itself, you're good to go. Like, what do you think, Tamer? What's your
Yeah, because it definitely balances out. It's like, why would you risk everything to start a business when if you put in a lot of effort into your studies and then try and secure a good job, like the payout isn't like in a sense justified to them because in a sense they have to take on a lot of risk whenever they want to start up a business. Like they have a lot of things that they will explore. So like actually, Yaka, that ties into a very nice part where I think it would be good that like with the purpose of this podcast is that we are sharing in a sense not just the good but also the bad side of startups. So maybe like can you share like the problems that you encountered when you were first like doing like your different startups since like we have a huge wealth of experience.
Yeah, I mean, problems like you have problems every day, right? Like that's the whole fire. That's the big part of the game, right? I think that's also what differentiates good founders from bad founders. Like it's just the speed of of solving problems and the quality of the solutions. So I think those are the only two parts of the equation that actually lead to good outcomes. Um, I don't know. I mean, look, I've had situations even when I was in Singapore. I was working with a co-founder, and then I thought like that company was gonna take off, and I quit my job in Dubai. I thought I was gonna stay in Singapore, and then one, bam, 2 weeks later, I don't have a co-founder anymore, right? So then I had to like start from scratch. So I think there's a bunch of these types of things that happen. Like I've also had people that were leading my company. Like for example, when I moved to London and I had one of my previous colleagues kind of step into the manager role, and she helped me manage that company while I was studying in London. And then at some point she called me. She said, "Yaka, I can't do this anymore." Obviously, she's done a terrific job before that, but at some point she said, "Look, I mean, it's a big responsibility. I also have other things that I want to pursue." And overnight, you have to find a solution that kind of like keeps the company afloat and that makes the company survive, right? And I think like the only difference that differentiates good companies from companies that at some point kind of like die out is the fact that the good companies were able to constantly solve problems and they were constantly finding good solutions, and that's what made them survive, but not only survive but also strive, right? So that's I think the key differentiator. And I think as a founder, the most important thing is that you just have to keep learning and keep meeting people, because both of these two variables are going to be the ones that are going to help you solve problems that you haven't faced before. Right? There's no real playbook of how to build a certain type of company, because if you want to build a huge company, it means that it's not something that everyone can see, right? But you just have to be really good at like putting the pieces of the puzzles together, solving problems, and then when like all these small wins compound, hopefully you get to a point where not many people before you have been. But obviously, I have to give a huge disclaimer. I'm still at the beginning of my journey, so I wouldn't say that I've cracked this yet. But I can definitely tell you that, yeah, problem solving is a big part of my everyday struggles and challenges.
definitely like problems is like one thing it's like one after another. So like you said, I think you're absolutely right. Like if you don't continuously learn and you don't continuously meet new people, I think like some people might think that like hey like as an entrepreneur, like a problem comes to you and you sit down in like some room, right, with a pen and paper like a mathematician and you can solve that issue. Usually it's not like that. Usually I think that in your welfare experience, you meet some, you keep on meeting people, and you keep on learning, and then the problem comes, and then you're like, hey, you know what? I think that I know this person can help me with it, or like, hey, I learned this before. I read this somewhere, and then that clicks, and then you immediately like go for it, and then you try things out. I think one thing you need to be okay with is to fail, because I feel that there are a lot of mini failures.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's why, like, even more importantly, I mean, basically for the past year and a half, I've been kind of giving myself this challenge of exploring and experimenting with different entrepreneurial ecosystems and putting myself out there while building both of my companies remotely. So I've spent a couple of months in Bangalore, in India, where I met terrific people, and I've had an extremely cool experience seeing how the ecosystem functions. And now I have something new that I can fall back to when I have certain challenges that I face in the future, right? Then I also spent a bunch of time in Singapore. I'm currently in Berlin, in Germany, again, trying to kind of immerse myself in a new ecosystem. So obviously, building companies takes time, but during this time when I am doing this, I also want to be in a position where I'm constantly learning new things and meeting new people. Because yeah, I'm trying to optimize for being an extremely good founder that can be in a position to build a huge company. Because I feel like if I just try to like building a huge company is not like a linear path, right? So you have to first be the person that can do it to then also do it. Because even if it happens too fast, and if you just happen to be lucky and you scale something extremely fast and then you can't control it, or it outgrows you, then you also have a problem, right? You raised a bunch of money, you couldn't kind of like you couldn't pace the growth of the company, and you couldn't grow with it, and then the company outgrows you, and then the company can go under extremely fast, right? So I think learning and meeting new people, I think that's the two things that never, they never expire. It should always be the primary focus.
Yeah, and it's not so hard to do either. Like, I mean, especially like let's say in Singapore, for example, there are events every day, and you can keep up. I assume that's one of the reasons. Like, you like London as well, right? There's always like amazing people meeting somewhere, and you can always join them, and then like in a sense, you can learn like so much. So yeah, Temen. So what do you think about like meeting these people and like everything? Do you think that's useful for you as well in like your own journey?
Yeah, definitely. It's like throughout my founder's journey as well, been attending like a lot of events, constantly meeting like new people, learning new ideas, and like through this podcast, always learning new lessons. It's like everyone is at a different step in their journey. They have something different to share, and yeah, they may even think help you to find something that you didn't even consider. Then it's like you avoided the problem in the first place.
Yeah, I completely agree with that.
Yeah. All right. Can. So now we will move on to the next section, which is, yes, our quick fire questions. All right. So Yaka, I'll be asking you like a few questions. Don't think, just answer the first thing that comes to your mind. All right.
Sounds good.
All right. So okay, so the first question: what's the first tool you cannot live without?
Notion. ChatGPT. If I can have two, Notion and ChatGPT. But yeah, Notion.
Notion. But why Notion?
It's a life changer. It put my unstructured life into a structure, and I like structured things. So, and my companies as well. Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, then moving on to the next question. Okay, so uh what is the weirdest DM like either of your startups have ever gotten?
It's probably one of the moms of the students that were using E-matura. So like, oh yeah, I know I have a good one. Basically, like we sell a digital course, right? So when you buy it, like it's very apparent that, imagine, okay, like you buy Netflix, right? And then imagine if people were texting, I'm sure that they do, right? That people text Netflix, hey, when am I gonna get this video delivered to my address, right? Like every year, no matter how transparent we make it on our website, and it's like online and everything, and you have your account and everything, there's one or two mothers that call and they're like, I ordered this 1 week ago and I still haven't received the package. Like, how do I use the recordings and everything, So those are definitely the funniest interactions that we have with the clients in E-matura.
Oh my god, this is hilarious. Yeah. Okay, then we'll
No matter how good you make the UI, the end users sometimes need to read.
Of course.
is
Of
our
course.
Problem. So, yeah.
Okay. All right. Then for our last question, Pitch your startup in 5 words. No using any buzzwords.
Which one? The epistemy?
Either or, you can choose.
Okay. I'll pitch
It's,
epistemy.
it's
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Right, it's quite straightforward.
Okay. Okay. Helping educational companies scale through AI.
Wow, okay, that's actually quite good. I don't know how you managed to do that.
yeah.
Yeah, it's like a GPT brain, like the only thing is like I think that was 6 words if I'm not sure. So like GPT is still bad at counting words, so
Oh,
whenever you say like keep it under 300 characters, then it's like 307, and then you have to find the word that you're gonna delete before sending it out to like a person, on LinkedIn. But it is what it is.
yeah, exactly. Like it's oh my god, the word count. It's a huge challenge. It's such a fundamental thing, but it's like I cannot tell you because we write blog articles and we need it to be like within 4,000 words, and it always goes up and beyond like crazy.
I can imagine him.
Oh yeah. So Yaka, I wanted to ask you, right? How can our audience keep up or follow like E-matura and Epistemy both, like in a sense that how can they follow your journey from here?
Okay. So yeah, trying to also be a bit more active on LinkedIn. So kind of building up the company profiles. So you can follow me on LinkedIn. So Jaka Bavdek, JAKA and then you can also like check out Epistemy on LinkedIn. You can check out E-matura on LinkedIn, and then I also have like a personal blog website where I post some of my biggest learnings or takeaways or some meditations about different ecosystems. So definitely check that out as well. Yeah, that's it.
That's
Then, then we'll end off this podcast with one final thing. Okay, you get to leave one sentence for the next founder walking on this journey. What would he say?
So basically, my message to another founder on this journey, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would say keep surviving until you make it. That's it. Yeah, because that's what it is, right? It's a game of survival, and then you first need to survive, and then in the end, hopefully, you can thrive.
that's a very good one you got. One of the good ones we got so far. So true. Just survive.
It's the GPT brain.
Oh yeah. Thank you so much, Yaka, for joining us today. I think that our audience will learn a lot from your experience. And whenever you come to Singapore, hopefully, we can create more connections and go to more events. So if anyone sees this man here in Singapore, remember that he's the one that you should learn from. Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Yaka.
Thank you for having me, guys. It was an absolute pleasure being in a podcast with such talented entrepreneurs. And yeah, when I do come to Singapore, we're definitely gonna go grab some chicken rice and maybe enjoy a nice beer tower before going to good events. Sounds good?
Amazing. That's all right. Thank you.